and welcome back to season 3 of the Canary Room. It's been a while since we've filmed a show. Much has happened in that time. We've got a new jacket, a new Canary Room, we've got some new birds, and we've got a new baby on the way as well, and not forgetting a new wife. How could I forget her? So it's been an incredibly busy couple of years. We're back though, back with a bang. We've got a return today of some of your favourite features. We're going to go on the road. We're back in Gerald Spencer's shed. Have a little look at that. We took a trip there in October. We've got the return of the Redpoll diaries. Yes, we've still got Redpolls in the shed. We've got some goldfinches as well, so they'll make an appearance. We've got Bird of the Week. We'll catch up with some new birds. And the biggest change, the episodes are going to be free. So they're going to be free every couple of weeks. I'm hoping to release them on a Sunday night so you can have a good watch of them after the weekend. And all I'd ask you to do is, if you look at our YouTube channel, just in the top corner there's a little button that says donate. So if you've enjoyed the show and you fancy donating some money just to keep the production costs, that would be fantastic. As always, sit back and enjoy the show. So first thing to do is to have a look at our new Canary Room. We'll have a pan around in a minute and look at the cages. We brought some of the old cages with us. You can see some cages just over my shoulder here. They're new. We've built some flight cages at the back. The room is 10 foot by 8 foot, so it's the same size as the old Canary Room, but it's a different orientation. So we've still got really high walls in here. We've still got the apex roof. As much natural light as we can get in as possible. But we'll have a little look around the room now and the cage configuration and see some of the things and some of the changes that I've made in the Canary Room this time round. So you may have noticed as you've been around the Canary Room there's some strange looking birds in there, but of course we've still got our Fifes. We've got a very good stud of champion Fife Canaries. Now, 2019 was my first year back on the show bench. I didn't show at all in 2018. I did breed some nice birds. We'll see still a couple of them in the shed. But I didn't get the opportunity to get out on the show bench at all. So last year in 2019 I had some fantastic judging engagements. I was over in Malta. I judged a new show up in Scotland. I judged North Wales. I judged north of England, and I had the great pleasure of judging the Swords CBS show over in Ireland, a show that I've read about for many years in Cage and Aviary Birds, and it was every bit as good, as I imagined it to be. So when we look in the Canary Room, we can see in the Fife stud that they've lightened up. So we've got a number of clear and lightly variegated and tipped birds. Now that's by absolute luck more than anything else. Over the last few years, as we've looked to select birds to retain them, some of the better birds have just happened to be clears. We'll see a little bit later on in the show when we go on the road to Gerald Spencer's that I was able to acquire a couple of clear yellow hens to go with some of the fantastic buff cocks that I bred this year. The birds did okay on the show bench for me, had a number of class wins, and I was lucky enough at the inaugural Federation show to take second best cinnamon with a variegated yellow cinnamon cock. Now on the show today, we've got some of your favourite features. What we're also going to do is look at top tips for the month. Now we're in January. It's a little bit cold outside, although we've had quite a mild winter. And as a consequence, the birds are quite forward in their condition. I've put them on a relatively light seed mix. I've added quite a lot of plain canary in since round about October time, and I'm just starting to change that round at the moment and add in more and more of their normal general mix that I use. I'm also started giving them egg food once a week. Now, my egg food video, which I made a couple of years now, maybe 3 years ago now, has had hundreds of thousands of views, which I have to say I'm absolutely delighted with. And there have been a number of comments within there. Can you freeze the mixture? Well, you absolutely can before you put the egg food mix in. I wouldn't freeze it with the egg the dry egg mix in, but actually the base mix, absolutely I do it every week. I've made a couple of additions to it. I add in peas or petit pois now, and I also add in some seed mix which I get from a seed supplier called Hates, which is called Cracker Tonic. I'm going to mix that up now. It's part of our top tips for January, so without further ado, let's get on to our top tips for January. So you can see the birds are enjoying the food as they always have done. So all these years later, I'm still making the mix the same way. As I say, I've added a little few petit pois in, I've added some Cracker Tonic in. Now what we've got is we've got some left. It's been a particularly mild winter so far, and as a consequence, the wild birds have enjoyed plentiful food still in the garden. I put peanuts out for them. I've got some Niger out for them as well. But what I'll do every Sunday, and I'm only giving egg food once a week at the moment, every Sunday with whatever's left, I'll put it on the wild bird feeder in the garden, and I'll watch where there's a robin, a blackbird, blue tits, a whole series of different garden birds. I'll watch them come and enjoy it. So let's have a little look outside of the bird room at the birds in the wild. Our next top tip is lighting. You'll be familiar with the lighting rig that we use in the Canary Room. It's from the Bird Room company. And what we're doing in January is every week we're putting the lighting on an additional 15 minutes. So we've got a main daylight tube in the shed here, and every week it will increase light by 15 minutes. Now we don't have any heating in here. The shed is fully lined and insulated. The window stays open all day, even in the coldest winter things, which is you'll often find me in the Canary Room decked in gloves to keep myself warm. So the third January tip is what we put in the water. We're using a product called Panacox, which is very similar to Baycox, which is essentially a treatment for coccidiosis. Now, particularly with the British birds, you can see there's a goldfinch just behind me there. Now I won't treat them every month, I know some fanciers do, but I will treat them at the end of the molt, and then in the end of January, and then again in February. With the rest of the room, it's just one treatment in January. So this is the product in question. It's from a company called Pantex, who are a Dutch-based company, and you put a couple of millilitres to a litre of water. Now I'll do that once, as I say, once a month in January, just to go through the whole shed, just to clear out any nasties. Speaking of nasties, we know one of the big challenges for canary breeders every time is mite. There's a top tips video on how to treat mite. Cleanliness is the summary of that video. What I've also started to use this year is Frontline. So I use a Frontline solution, which is available from the vet. I use a dropper, a pipette, and I will put just a drop on the preen gland of the bird. So the preen gland is just above the tail. In fact, we'll catch a bird up in a minute and we'll show you exactly what the preen gland looks like. So January is all about preparation for breeding. So just to recap, we're giving egg food once a week. We've got a really good recipe. You've seen as soon as I put it in the cage, the birds devoured it. It's then about the increase in natural light. Well, it's a daylight tube in here which simulates natural light. So we're increasing natural light once a week. We've then got a treatment, a panacox treatment, a baycox treatment if you like, just to clean the gut out, just to make sure there's no nasties living in the birds. And finally, we're giving them a mite treatment, and we're using frontline solution, which we're dropping on the just on the back of the rump, just by the preen gland. And those tips will hopefully ensure that the birds continue to come through, continue to steadily develop, get in time for the breeding season. So there are January top tips. I'd like to introduce you now to some of the new inhabitants of the Canary Room. You know that we have a number of different varieties. In the last episode of the show, we had some Spanish Razzers, we had some Reds, they've gone. We've now got some Scotch Fancy that we'll be using as feeders, both for the borders, which are a new addition to the room, and we've got some Norwich back. We've also got some different types of coloured canaries, some agate mosaics. Now, I've admired these for a number of years. Stunning bird, absolutely stunning bird. Very lucky to acquire a couple of pairs, so I'll breed them straight. My ambition is to develop a very strong competitive line in them, but I will also use them to help rear different birds around the shed as well. So we'll have a quick look at the Scotch first. I have to say, when I first acquired these, I got confused. I've seen Irish Fancies, and I think they're a beautiful, delightful bird. And in my brain, which clearly wasn't functioning properly at the time, I thought that Scotch Fancies and Irish Fancies were very, very similar. As you can see, as we take a closer look, they are not similar at all. In fact, when I first looked at the Scotch Fancies, I was reminded of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'm sure that they're a beautiful bird. I've got 3 or 4 hens. I'm slightly unsure how many hens I've got, but I think it's 3. It might even be 4. So we'll give them a run. But I imagine come October time they'll be looking for a new home. The agate mosaic's very, very different story. I've looked for those for some time now, and I've managed to get some off a guy who many of you will know, maybe even follow, Julian's Canary Bird Room. Julian takes some fantastic videos. He's a lovely guy, and more importantly, he's got some fantastic birds there. So thanks very much for those, mate. Really appreciate it. We'll take a little close look at them. I did mention borders. I have owned borders before. It's many, many years since I last owned a border. I've got a couple of borders. Good friend of mine, Graham Holdsworth. Graham's got a stud of borders which he's been working on for a number of years. He's brought in some absolutely top quality blood, the best in the world. I think we all know who I'm talking about there. And slowly but surely he's developing a very, very nice stud of birds. I'm fortunate enough, I've got a pair of the borders in the room, so we'll, if we can see those now, and a nice bird, big buff cock, a small, quite a jaunty yellow hen. So the pair together, the match pair together, would be very interesting to see what they breed. And I've taken the plunge again and gone back in to get some Norwich. So my Norwich last time, you'll remember, there wasn't the room for them in the Canary Room, so I moved them on. But I've managed to be able to go back to the person that I moved them on to and acquire some more birds a few years down the line, so we'll see how they go. The idea again will be to mule with them at some stage, which is a lovely little interlude into our favourite part of the show. It's the Redpoll Diaries. Welcome to the Redpoll Diaries. Regular viewers of the show will know that these beautiful, delightful British finches have caused me no end of heartache and frustration. 2019 with the birds was absolutely no different, although I did for the first time successfully rear 3 young redpolls, which I was delighted with. We see some shots of them in the nest here and then fledging. I did hatch out some pied redpolls, but they didn't make it past a couple of days, which was really, really disappointing. Not one to give up, although I have thinned the numbers of polls down over the last couple of years. I've got 5 specially built cages for them. They give them a little bit of privacy. I moved them last year. I moved the birds, all of the birds, the first weekend of May, so just before the redpolls were ready to go down, and actually as I had young in the nest with the canaries, so it wasn't an ideal time, but I did it all the same, and so we'll see this year. I've got a pair of silvers in, so fingers crossed to see how they do. I've also expanded. You can just see behind my shoulder here, we've got some lovely flight cages for some goldfinches. I've got a pair of normal goldfinches. They're pea throats, so they're not quite normal. And I've got a trio of Siberians, so a Yumo cock split for Lutino and 2 Lutino hens, so no doubt they'll cause me plenty of heartache as the season comes on. Beautiful, beautiful birds, and a really nice addition to the Canary Room. We'll see how they do. I've been reading up on both species, to be fair. And it seems to be that they enjoy their own environment. I've got some nice big cages for both the redpolls and for the goldfinches. I did some shopping in the Stafford show last year to get some really decent cage fronts from Belgium, and I built 3 flights behind me. So big tale of the Canary Room this year. We'll see as the months progress. They're looking in relatively good condition, so they won't go down probably until April, May time. So we'll see how we get on, but as always, stay tuned for the diaries. So before we go back on the road, let's take a look at some of the birds that, some of the Fifes that we'll be breeding with this year. I'm going to have a look at 3, 4, maybe 5 birds. So we'll start with a heavily variegated green-yellow hen that I bred. It's just got a mark on the top of its head. Very, very beautiful bird, this. Really, really nice bird. Like the way it's bred. Really, when early on, I thought this is going to do some damage on the show bench. It did card. It did quite well. Although the show season was interrupted by a number of judging engagements. The next bird that we're going to look at is a ticked buff cock. Again, a bird I bred last year, second at the Northwest in its class, carded also at the Federation National, so only out twice and carded on both occasions. So he's got 3 hens this year to run with them. One of those hens is the mother of Gerald Spencer's 2018 Best in Show from North Wales, so it'll be interesting to see what they produce. I've already ordered my rings for this year, and they've arrived, so I'm using Federation rings again for the Fifes. So looking forward to seeing what they produce. The third bird that we're going to have a look at is a clear yellow cock. Now this bird was brought in from Gerald. I waited some time for this bird. It's related to some of the clears that I've got in the room, so I'm looking forward to see how this works. Now this bird's run with 3 sisters this year, so you'll notice, and we'll have a little look at in a minute, that what I've done this year is the Fifes that I want to go together, I've overwintered. So I've put a cock in with 3 hens, or a cock in with 2 hens, or where I'm just going to run pairs together, I've put them together. I'll separate them mid-February, around about Valentine's Day, ironically enough. So we'll see if that means that when I do some introduction later on, that should go seamlessly. One of the reasons I've done it, I've got a couple of whites in the room, so they, if a bird's used to seeing a white, then when it comes to the mating, that should be okay. So that's a clear yellow cock. And then the final bird again is another bought-in bird. It's a variegated white cock that I bought in from Gerald. I am delighted to get this bird, to be honest. Visually, you can find faults in it, as you can with every bird if you're honest. But really importantly, this bird was bred out of a self-blue hen that Gerald bred in 2018, and for me it was the model Fife. Its father is the stud cock, the stud dark cock in Gerald's shed, so that was a really important acquisition. Again, I had to wait for it, but he's an absolute gentleman, and he let me take it at the end of the season. So those are the 4 birds that we're looking at today. As the year goes on and as the season goes on, we will look at different birds, and we'll have a close-up look at some of them, and we'll see the trial and tribulations as the season goes on, no doubt. So it's time now to go on the road. It's another picture of me, it's another car journey. We are back on the road. We're heading over to Barnsley this morning. I've had my eye on a little yellow hen from Gerald's stud for some time now, hoping to be able to pick her up today. Weather is atrocious, so I'm going to sign off now, and I will see you in Barnsley. We're going into one of, if not the most successful stud of Fife Canaries in the UK. What's clear when you get into the sheds is both the quality of the birds, but also the thoughtfulness of the shed layout, as we can see here. So Gerald is quite a shy guy. We see him here just coming into shot, commenting on a couple of brothers. Gerald's always had a strong dark line of birds. There's a couple of green buff cocks here, brothers, as Gerald's just mentioned, stunning birds. Then we've got one of Gerald's clear yellows. Now over the last few years he's dominated the clear section. He's been working on that line for probably 4 or 5 years. This is a bird that particularly took his fancy. It's a clear yellow hen. Indeed, it would go on to win Best in Show at the inaugural Federation show in December. An absolute beauty of a bird. We get a closer look of it here, and some of my camera work, I'm afraid, doesn't do it justice. As we move around the shed then, what we can see is just the selection of clear birds that Gerald's got. A noticeable change for me. I've been a visitor to Gerald's shed for 15, 16 years now. And when I was first there, I noticed that there were numerous clear birds. As we can see here, show training is well underway with some of his outstanding clears. There are still some incredibly good quality dark birds in the shed. There's a green, heavily variegated yellow hen here. Still some way to go through the molt some finishing off to do. Gerald's also bred some outstanding fawn birds. Two sisters we see here, the first lightly marked, the second just the silhouette of this bird, you can see the shape of it. An outstanding quality bird. I did try and take it, but to no avail, unfortunately. My trip was rewarded with a couple of over-year yellow hens, an orange ring bird here, which is a few years old, but one that I thought was worth picking up, and I picked up its daughter as well. So look forward to seeing those with my buff cocks this year. See here a variegated yellow cock, one of the greatest specimens of the Fife I've seen. You can always pick faults in them, but this is an absolutely beautiful bird. Thoroughly enjoyable trip to Gerald's with some incredible birds on show. The variegated that we saw at the end, I thought was one of the best Fifes I think I've seen. That's all we've got time for on the Canary Room. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back in February with another couple of episodes. So if you've enjoyed the show, give it a thumbs up, leave comments down. We will get back in touch with the comments, I promise you. If you've got any questions for the show, again in the comments section, and we'll include those on a future episode. If you've enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. And don't forget the donate button right at the top of our YouTube channel. Until next time, thanks very much for watching. Take care.